Good afternoon, everyone. The May 12th, 2020 virtual meeting of the Arundel County Council is now in session. This afternoon, we will hear from the Department of Public Works and a handful of other departments regarding the capital portion of the proposed FY21 budget. Madam Secretary, please call the roll. Madam Secretary, there you go.
Hare?
Present.
Ms. Hare, I'm sorry, did not hear you.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Lacy?
Present.
Mr. Volkey?
Present.
Mr. Pruski?
Here.
Ms. Fiedler?
Present.
Ms. Rodvian?
Present.
Ms. Pickard?
Present.
And Madam Auditor?
Present.
All right, we have all council present and Madam Auditor.
Thank you. May we please pause for the invocation? Mr. Pruski will lead this afternoon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would ask everyone to bow their heads and pray with whatever faith they feel comfortable. We ask during these difficult times that we look to the future and hope. We especially appreciate those that are on the front lines, our police, our fire, and anyone who's interacting with the public to serve them. We ask you to remember them and also those that have lost their lives in this crisis, and we hope towards a better future. Thank you.
Ms. Fiedler will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read the Open Meetings Act statement.
And Madam Chair, in advance, let you know I seem to be having some Wi-Fi issues here at the office, so I'm not sure if I'm freezing on you or not. The county attorney has asked that I read the following statement. The Maryland Open Meetings Act, a state law, requires public meetings to be open to the public and to be held in places reasonably accessible to individuals who would like to attend these meetings. General Provisions Article, Section 3102C. The virtual format of this meeting of the County Council is due to the COVID-19 emergency and is necessary in light of the serious risks associated with public gatherings, as well as the governor's various executive orders limiting public gatherings. While a virtual meeting of this type was not envisioned by the Open Meetings Act, steps have been taken to ensure that this virtual meeting includes alternate accessibility features that the Open Meetings Act Compliance Board and the courts have reviewed and approved, such as having a call-in phone number that allows anyone with a telephone to call and listen to the meeting, broadcasting the meeting with video and audio on cable TV and on the web, and allowing written public comments to the legislation be filed with the clerk and considered by the council. The County Office of Law has opined that the public access provided by this technology makes this virtual meeting reasonably accessible to the public and therefore complies with the Open Meetings Act.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Is there any item any council member would like to place on the agenda this afternoon? Seeing none. Because this is a virtual meeting, we cannot provide reasonable seating facilities for the public or the news media, and we cannot physically be located in Annapolis, the county seat. May I have a motion to suspend Rules 3-103 relating to the location of meetings, 3-105 relating to reasonable seating facilities for the public, and 3-106 relating to reasonable seating facilities for the news media?
Councilwoman Rodvian, so moved.
May I have a second?
Lacy, second.
Madam Secretary, will you call the roll on the motion, please?
Ms. Hare,
Aye.
Ms. Lacy,
Aye.
Mr. Volkey,
Aye.
Mr. Pruski,
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler,
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian,
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. The motion to suspend rules 3-103, 3-105, and 3-106 is passed.
Thank you. We're going to begin today's presentation with the Department of Public Works. I want to remind all presenters today to please remember to introduce yourself and continue to identify yourself before speaking each time. Mr. David Braun and Ms. Naomi Kerrigan will be here with us throughout the afternoon. Ms. Kerrigan is the budget analyst for all departments presenting today. Mr. Braun is going to be the main lead presenter as we move through the various departments. I see they're coming up on the screen, being pulled into the meeting. Good afternoon, Mr. Braun and Ms. Kerrigan. You're muted, Mr. Braun. You have the floor, though.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council. I'm David Braun, Acting Deputy Director for the Department of Public Works. The first class of projects that we will be presenting this afternoon is for the general county class. So it's a little bit unusual there too, because within that class, we have several different departments that each have some projects in that. So there's going to be some moving back and forth of individuals as we go through this class here. As we get started here, I'd like to first ask Ms. Kerrigan to offer some information and go over a couple of the initial projects.
Good afternoon, Naomi Kerrigan, Capital Budget Analyst, Office of the Budget. So if you would all please turn to the General County tab in your budget book. I'd like to orientate you with just some of the information that's being provided to you today. As you can see here on the first page, you have an index of all the projects in alpha order and their respective page numbers. In moving to the next page, we have the project listing report. And what this provides you is a complete list of active projects for the particular county class that we'll be reviewing. In this instance, it's the general county. And there's some information, summary information about each project on this page. You have the total, which represents the total estimated cost of the project. And this is the summation of all the columns to the right. So we have prior, which represents the prior approved, the cumulative legal authorization for a project prior to the budget year. In this instance, the budget year is fiscal year 21. And moving across the page, you see fiscal years 22 through 26. This is generally referred to as the capital program. So again, total is the summation of prior, budget year, and capital program. And moving on to the next report provided, we have the funding detail report. And again, this is provided for each class in the budget. And this really just provides you a summary of the funding sources that are used to finance projects in the capital budget. And on the left-hand side, you can see that they're chunked into category. We have bonds, we have PAYGO, which represents the use of budget year revenues or fund balance, grants and aid, which are awards from the state or the Fed, and other miscellaneous funding sources. Any questions? Okay, moving on, I just kind of want to review what a project looks like in the budget book. Each project has 2 pages, as you know. The top page, or commonly referred to as the A page of a project, basically provides you a brief description of the project, a map of the location, or indicates whether it is a county-wide project. It also provides you information pertaining to the various phases in a project. Moving to the second page just below, or the B page, We have on the upper left-hand side project status. And moving to the right-hand side on the top, we have change from prior year, which would indicate any changes to the project from fiscal year 20 approved program. The lower portion of the page represents the funding summary table, which basically breaks down all the funding sources utilized to finance this particular capital project. I do want to note that there are a couple projects that we will not be reviewing today that are in the general county class. Specifically, or I should say a good example of this is seen with Rec and Parks agricultural preservation program. The bulk of their projects are in the P class. However, they do have one C class project, but they did present that to you last week, and so we won't be covering that again here today. Additionally, there are a couple unique circumstances, shall we say. There is one project that is not in the capital budget book, and that is the Rural Legacy Program. This project is used to purchase preservation easements in the rural legacy area, and it's funded by the state through their program. It is not in the budget book. However, they are not requesting any appropriation for the fiscal year 21 program. We will be adding the budget book page because they do have viable appropriation in this project still. So I've been working with the auditor. She's aware of it. We will be including this project in the budget book, but again, we're not requesting any additional funding for this project. And the second item that I would like to point out to you before we get started is on page 48 of your binder. So if we could just turn to that. We have Arundel High School turf field. This project provides the county's contribution toward an additional turf field for Arundel High School. This project was in the fiscal year 20 approved program. However, as you can see here, we're requesting zero funding on this particular project number. I would like to note that this project has not been cut, that there is this project in the program. It has just been moved to the E class under Board of Education. Specifically, it's the Athletic Stadium Improvement Program. So again, the funding has not been cut for this project. It's merely shifted from one class to another class. Any questions? Okay, great, moving on. So I guess we should get started. Why don't we turn to page 22 of your binder. We will start with the Department of Aging. They have one capital project this year, the South County Senior Center renovation and expansion. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to the Director of Aging, Pam Jordan.
Good afternoon. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see. And there I am. All right. Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair and other honored members of the County Council. For the record, my name is Pam Jordan, and I'm the Director of the Department of Aging and Disabilities. I do have with me in the waiting room, I don't think they're on the screen, but Carissa Gowan, who's our Deputy Director, Wendy Carasquillo, who's our Fiscal Management Assistant, and Joelle Ridgway, who's the Director of Community and Disability Services, but overseeing all the senior centers and nutrition program at this time. So just briefly, the department serves older adults, people with disabilities, caregivers, anybody who wishes to plan for their future. One of the ways we do that is in one of our in our 7 senior activity centers. You may recall this year we finished one capital project at the Brooklyn Park Senior Activity Center. It's a beautiful 3-classroom addition, and we were enjoying it. So we look forward to getting back into all of our centers. Our centers serve 55 and above for socialization, recreation, activities, food. We serve a hot meal every day in our senior activity centers. And we also have partners such as the Anne Arundel Community College providing educational opportunities for learning. The senior center we're talking about is located at 27 Stepney's Lane in Edgewater. When it opened in 1979, it hosted approximately 1,076 members in 5 activity spaces and a multi-purpose room. The center just celebrated its 40th anniversary last year and now has a membership of over 2,500. So more than 1,500 unduplicated members enjoy that center from 40 years ago. So as you can imagine, space is at a premium. With the exception of a small interior alcove that was enclosed 3 years ago. There have been no additions to the building. Currently, to accommodate the overflow, we are holding classes at the library and the police station just down the road. Last year, through capital funding, Janet Fleming did a study of the interior space of the center, identified the ability to repurpose space to add 2 new classrooms. And this year, the request is to not only implement the Janet Fleming study, but to enclose the underutilized anterior space of the building, which you should have a photograph of in your packet, that shows a patio that never gets used. So the ask is for engineering, feasibility, and construction of that anterior space. We'd be able to bring members back in out of the overflow buildings and be able to address our wait list for programming. The capital funding also includes proposed renovations to the parking lot, which has a lot of ankle biters in it right now, not very safe for our older adults who are trying to navigate the 40-year-old parking lot. So I do ask for your favorable consideration. I would just say that one of the nice features about this is we won't be going out of the footprint very far, if at all. So that impervious surface already exists, and making it a very environmental friendly project. And then I just wanted to put while this is the only true capital project, I'm very pleased that the Department of Public Works and the administration were able to include some feasibility money in the general county funding to start taking a look at Arundel Senior Activity Center, which is experiencing the same kind of crowding and overflow issues, so that we can look at alternatives for repurposing interior space and possible expansion. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Jordan? I don't see any questions from my colleagues, Ms. Jordan, so thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll see everybody tomorrow.
Great. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Braun, we're going to move along.
Yeah. Next department we'll hear from is Central Services, and Christine Romans, Director of Central Services, should be on in just a minute. Christine, if you're there, we're ready to move forward.
There she is. Good afternoon, Ms. Romans. You are muted.
There we go. Hi, how are you all? Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the council. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon again. For the record, my name is Christine Anderson Romans. I'm the Director of the Office of Central Services. I have 9 projects to go over with you this afternoon. And I believe that Ms. Corby is going to display for you a 1-page summary handout of the funding for the 9 projects that I'll be discussing. I'll give that just a minute. Thank you, Laura. Perfect. If you'd like to follow along, I will also tell you the page numbers that these should be appearing on in your packets. So the first project is C4370, underground storage tank replacement on page 2. As you can see, the only change is to add $100,000 in the out year of the program. Several years ago, we went through and replaced a lot of our underground storage tanks. This just supplies us with a source of funds to maintain those underground storage tanks, or if we find any additional ones that need to be replaced. We do this all in keeping with MDE's guidelines. The next project is C4435 on page 4. This is the facility renovation and relocation program. We have some additional funds that were added in both fiscal 21 and fiscal 22, as well as funding in the out years of the program. This is a compilation program where we fund lots of different projects out of C4435. Everything from renovating restrooms in fire stations and kitchens and restrooms in fire stations, as well as carpet, paint, renovations, any of those sorts of projects. $650,000 is the typical amount of funding every year. And we, of course, have a backlog of lots of things that people would like us to be fixing in their facilities. The additional funding will help us get to some of those issues. There is a representative project list that has been provided for the council. Just so you know that is representative. Things do come onto that list that become a higher priority. Things fall off of the list as maybe a decision is made that we don't need to proceed forward. And we wait to make those decisions throughout the current fiscal year. The next project is C5007 on page 6. This is the Arundel Center renovation. This is a project that started many, many years ago, actually, and it is just in the final phase of completion right now. And we just have some remaining electrical work that needs to be done, things like tagging different electrical circuits. And we're working with the vendor to try to close this project out. C5378 is the next kind of major bit of funding for the Office of Central Services. This is County Facilities and Systems Upgrade on page 11. Again, some funding was added to the usual amount that is provided in this account, again, to address backlog. The things that would get funded out of this program are roofing, HVAC, boilers, some large investments in the infrastructure that support the buildings. Again, a representative project list has been provided for all of you. And as we complete projects and get bids, we can add or take away projects as needed throughout the fiscal year. C5717 is the parking garage repair and renovation account on page 16. We have several projects underway, both at the Whitmore Garage and at the Glen Burnie Garage. Years of sort of light maintenance has meant that we needed to do some pretty significant work to both of those garages. Updated cost estimates have been provided, which is the driving factor for some additional funds out of for fiscal 21 as well as fiscal 23. On page 17 is C5718, which is the Millersville Garage renovation. I will talk about it first because it's first in the program and in the book. However, it really comes behind the renovation of the fire equipment maintenance facility, which is also at the Millersville property. The Millersville Garage is over 40 years old. It doesn't include adequate crew facilities for the men and the women that work for fleet administration. And the building does need to be upgraded and renovated. The concept is that if and when a new fire equipment maintenance facility is constructed, that entity that's at the Millersville Garage will move off-site to their new building, and the Millersville Garage will then be renovated to address some of the issues like and that's why it occurs in fiscal 23 and fiscal 24. The program this year just slides the program or that project out 1 year, and that's the change you see there. I just mentioned the fire equipment maintenance facility is C5719, and that's on page 18. This project was slated to start in the current fiscal year with some design work. However, we are looking for a more appropriate piece of land in order to do this project. So funds have been added for land acquisition. And then once the land is acquired, the project would then start with design and construction out in fiscal 23. We have a request for 2 new projects. And you can see those at the bottom of the sheet. Page 24 is C5799. That's to modernize 2 of the 5 elevators at the Arundel Center. We've had several outages in this current set of elevators on the considered old side of the Arundel Center. Several of the outages, all told, these 2 elevators were out of service for a couple of months in the last couple of years. They're not ADA accessible. The fire department can't use them if they need to transport a patient out of the building. I have joked that whenever the elevators do break down, it would be easier to build the time machine to go back to the 50s and get the parts from Westinghouse and bring them forward. So it's time to modernize those elevators. And then the final new project is on page 26, C5801. This is to renovate 26 bathrooms at the Harry S. Truman complex on Harry S. Truman. We are moving through updating these sorts of facilities in our fire stations. We've completed the Arundel Center. Work on the restrooms has just started at the Heritage Complex, and so it's time to do the same kind of work at the Truman Complex. Design would start on this program in fiscal 22 with construction slated for fiscal. That is the list of projects that I have to discuss with you, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
Let's see, do we have any questions about these projects for Ms. Romans? I don't see any questions. Looks like I think we're good. So thank you for being with us today.
See you tomorrow.
Mr.
Okay, thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Next department is the Department of Health. I think they're getting added as we speak.
And I believe we lost our chairman, so if we can give it a moment. Ms. Lacey, if you would like to start things rolling as vice chair while we wait for the chairman to come back. You are, Ms. Lacey, you are muted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Secretary.
I believe our chairman is now back.
Heck, okay, just as I was finding where we are on our outline.
Sorry about that. I got relegated to an attendee. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Braun. You have the floor.
Thank you, David Braun, Department of Public Works. At this point, we'd like to turn it over to the representatives of the Department of Health.
Thank you. I can't see anybody, so I'm just gonna, there we go. Thank you. I'm Nilesh Kalyanaraman. I'm the health officer for the Anne Arundel County Department of Health. It's a pleasure to be here with the County Council today. We're here to present our capital budget, and I'm actually going to turn it over to Don Curdian, our Acting Director of Environmental Health. And we're also joined by Billy Penley, our Chief Financial Officer at this time. So Don, I will turn it over to you.
Good afternoon. This is Don Curdian, the Acting Director of Environmental Health. And our first project is the demo and building code. It is C206-500. This is consistent with program asking for $200,000. This is a fund that we use to alleviate any public health emergencies on vacant properties. We use it for board ups and cleanups. This is also a shared fund with the Department of Inspections and Permits and Zoning. So they have large demo projects and large cleanup projects that with a court order, they can use this fund as well. So it is a shared fund. That is on page 1. The next project is the Failed Sewage Disposal and Well Program. This is on page 7. This is also consistent with program. This is a fund that we use for people that need financial assistance and they need perk test, repairs of septic systems, as well as drilling a new well when they're out of water. This is a project that is not something that the county gets money back from, but it is well used, and people that have financial difficulties can use this to replace their well or a septic system. And the last one is our septic enhancement program, which is C537700. This is on page 10. This also is consistent with program. This is the Bay Restoration Grant program. 3.3 million. This is the grant that we get from the Department of the Environment annually. We have administered this grant since 2008. We repair septic systems by putting in nitrogen reducing units to reduce the nitrogen to the Bay watershed. This is also used for connecting any septic systems where there's an existing sewer line to public sewer, where we can get rid of a septic system that puts in a higher nitrogen level into the bay and put it into a county plant where we can get it down to an ENR and a much lower nitrogen level. So those are the projects for the Department of Health, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Do we have any questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, I wish y'all well. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. We will see you tomorrow.
Great. Mr. Braun, you can move along.
Next, we have OIT, Mr. Napolitano, for his projects in the general class.
Mr. Braun, your sound is rather low. If you could try to increase it, that would be helpful.
Good afternoon, Mr. Napolitano. We are ready for you when you're ready.
Good to be with you. Thank you. My name is Rick Napolitano, Director of OIT. For those that are watching online, I'd normally introduce my team at this time, but we chose, just for the sake of ease, not to do that. I am exceptionally proud of them this year for their response to COVID-19. They've done a number of things, and I am deeply appreciative of them. Also very appreciative of your funding us in the past, primarily because you enabled us to be ready to respond to COVID-19 with real agility. And we've been on a restructure of our infrastructure in order to provide capabilities. And because we had these things in place, we were able to respond fairly quickly. We have 4 particular projects this year. The presentation should be coming up shortly, I presume. Flip, next page. These are the 4 projects. They break down into 2 very easy and then 2 that are more complex. So I'm going to cover, the first one is the technology enhancements, which is about $10 million. And we have a page on that following, so I'm going to skip over it for now. The second one is the cable TV PEG funding, which is recurring capital from franchise fee, and it's $600K per year, just rolls in, rolls out. This is a list of the projects. Many of you are probably more familiar with it this year than last year, just because you've had the opportunity to work with them. They've done an excellent job combining the multiple streaming media into a single platform. So that's a recurring activity, nothing special going on there. The next one down is fiber network. This again is an annual recurring. We have over 300 miles of fiber throughout the county. We've installed 180 new sites in the last few years. This continues to connect traffic sites, different places within the county. And again, it's a very straightforward project as a recurring funding. And the last one is the radio upgrade. The radio upgrade is a very complex problem, and we have a single page on that to cover it in a little more detail. So with that, we'll go to page 3. This now is the information for the C519600 Information Technology Enhancements Project. This is a breakdown of the $10 million in large chunks. You can see that corporate infrastructure takes care of things like PCs, printers. Our cloud migration activity, video management would be a tool that allows us to take all the video from our various cameras and combine them into a single view. The network cyber, again, a lot of background work. We have an optical network in the ground and connecting all of the fiber throughout the county, and it just needs a tech refresh now and again. The cyber, you're probably more familiar with just because of all the activity in the news lately. Public Safety Core is dealing with the record management for fire and for police. We're in the midst of doing police right now. We're getting ready to start fire. And then, of course, fire alerting is a project that allows us to enable all of the fire stations around the county to respond more quickly in an emergency. The Land Use Core focuses on AWAM is an asset management system. It takes all of the assets in the county and puts them in a common system. We're starting with DPW. DPW has been working on this for about 2 years and making very good progress. They ironed out the wrinkles, and now we're going to start applying the capability to other departments. So we'll take all of our rec and park facilities, put them into this, and then we'll be able to track each component part all the way through from buy to disposal. We also have some activities associated with telestaff and learning management. These are staffing tools, and these will help all the departments. We use telestaff for fire and police, and now that we've been working with DPW, we're going to roll it out to DPW. And then learning management allows us just to have tracking of certifications and online training, that kind of fun thing. And the last one is just a miscellaneous group of activities for enterprise. This will get into helping AIMS, which is the Department of Aging system. We're upgrading our 311 call center, and we have a handful of personnel activities that are associated with that as well. If you go down to the bottom of the page, can't read it on my screen, it's blocked. These are some major initiatives that we have going on this year. Rec and Park modernization is a heavy effort for us this year. In terms of, we've taken all of the rec and parks, we've broken it into two components. The facility side, which is actually the parks and the component elements at the parks. We're trying to make sure they all have Wi-Fi, they all have fiber going to the parks, all of the capabilities that would make a facility work. And then we broke it into the software side. The software side is looking at where will we use specific tools to help them, and where will we use general tools that are available to the whole county, for instance, the time card system. And so that's a big initiative for us this year. The Land Use Navigator, many of you are familiar with. We're struggling. Our original target was to get it out this summer. Between COVID-19 and some vendor performance, we're slipping. So it'll probably be later in the fall, but that will be a huge effort. It will allow people not have to come into the county to register for various reports, et cetera. I talked on most of the others. HRIS is a new personnel system. The funding in the plan right now is for this year, for FY21, is to do the design and think through the requirements capability, and then we'll deploy it probably in FY22. So if there's no questions on that, I would move to page 4. And since I can't see if any questions, I'll just trust you guys to tell me that you have questions or not. The 800 megahertz radio system, I think most of you are familiar with it. If you're not, we can go into more details. We don't have any unfunded requests. This is all prior approved funding, and this will just be the next increment in that process. You can see that we've deployed portable radios to all the police and to their cars. We finished that's supposed to be fiber microwave transport, which the picture on the right there is a picture of the transport background. The team's done an excellent job in minimizing costs by using existing fiber instead of all microwave. The detailed design is about 90% complete, which is huge on this kind of project. The licenses have been granted, and then the grading and permits is what we started in probably in about January. That process seems to be going well. We've had a few setbacks. The Crownsville site failed. We can't use that site, so we had to find a new site, and that process is ongoing. And then we have some activity with Greenberry Point and Broad Creek, where we're running into some some compliance issues. So overall, the project is on track. There are some delays here and there, but on the grand scheme, I think we're progressing according to plan. So those are the major projects underway, and that's what we're looking for you to approve in our capital budget this year.
Thank you, Mr. Napolitano. Do I have any other questions? Do we have questions? Oh, we have some questions. Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Napolitano, thank you. Good work by your folks. Like you said, it really has made this possible. Question for you about FY23 on your information technology enhancement. Over what we approved, last year in the capital improvement program versus what you're asked or what's being proposed in this one, it's about rough math, almost $4 million difference. What's added there in FY23 that's causing that increase?
Excuse me one moment, Mr. Volke, your audio is pretty soft.
Okay, I'll try again. Did you hear my question, Mr. Napolitano, or do you want me to repeat it?
Well, since I don't have the answer, if you repeat it, it'll give me more time, but no, I did hear it. I'm looking right now. You're asking
Okay.
FY23?
Yes, sir.
And it was specific to the information technology enhancements?
Yeah, it looks like that's 10.74 in FY23, and I believe what we'd had in last year's capital improvement program for IT enhancement in FY23 was 6.807.
Thank you. Excellent question. What happened was we developed, when I got here, a 5-year plan. And in the 5-year plan, it took us out to about right where you're saying. And so we had only projected real asks through that year. And then the out years we hadn't done. So this summer we met with all of the departments. And as we went through all the departments, I was going to put a picture of it in here of the plan, but just because it was too complex, we have redeveloped the next set of 5-year plans. So actually the funding for those out years will grow once we load those into the program. And that's why the increase. The original 6 million was just a base number. The $10 million is now associated with specific projects.
Got it. Can you get us information on those specific projects?
The short answer is yes, and I will.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Napolitano? Seeing none, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Mr. Braun, we'll move ahead.
And the next one is actually Public Works. So I will go through a number of projects that the Department of Public Works has within the general county class. The first one is on page 5, which is the general county project planning project. The 2 projects that we are requesting funding for for FY21 are the Arnold Senior Center, which Ms. Jordan already mentioned in her presentation, and also a space study for both office and resource use for the Cultural Resources Department of the Office of Planning and Zoning. Next project on page 13 is the Rock Creek Aerator. This project has actually been completed, and we're showing a deappropriation of $222,000. Next is on page 14 is the additional salt storage capacity. We have been working through the Bureau of Highways to increase the salt storage capability of the county for a number of years now. FY21 includes additional funding of $213,000 for the project that was started in FY20 at the Dover Road facility. And that one will be moving forward. The rest of the program is as shown before, basically trying to do one facility every other year for the 3 facilities that are proposed. And the next project, I think that's the last one we have, Public Works has in this class, is on page 25, the West County Road Operations Yard. What's being proposed for FY21 is only the design portion of that project before we kind of get a better idea of what the full scope and method of financing would be for both the construction of a new facility and what the purpose of the existing yard in Odinson would be. At that point, it's only the design funding we have shown in FY21. I think that is all of the Public Works projects in the general county class. If there are any questions, be glad to answer what I can.
Thank you. I see a question from Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Braun, thank you for the presentation. I got questions on everything that you have presented, so I'll just go by them piece by piece, and if anybody else needs to jump in, I'll step back. When you talked about the general county project plan with the $260,000 appropriation, and you said that was for studies on the Arnold Senior Center and then also Office of Planning and Zoning Cultural Resource Center. Can you break out what the costs are for those two studies? How much is for Arnold Senior Center and how much is for the OPZ Cultural Center?
The current estimate is $120,000 for Arnold and $140,000 for the cultural resources.
Okay, thank you, sir. My next question is on the additional salt capacity. So that wasn't anticipated in the plan last year that there would be an additional $213,000 needed. I know that the $850,000 in FY22 and 24 was anticipated. I guess what is it that's changed about that project that's now led to an additional request for another $213,000?
David Braun, Public Works. We had $850,000 shown in FY20 for the Dover Road project. That was basically the same cost that had been used several years before for the estimates and had not been updated. We're in the process of finishing a design build specification to try to both make the construction project go faster and a little bit simpler and hopefully less expensive. But under our under the normal way of design, bid, construction, the current construction cost estimate is about just over $1 million for the facility. That's just based on what the current cost estimate is.
Okay. Thank you. And so it would take $213,000 more for you all to finish this project?
That's the estimate at this point, yes.
Okay. And then moving to the West County Road Operations Yard, the nearly $2 million that's been appropriated there, that's new to the capital improvement program, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you indicated that that was for design money and really sort of scoping out what the project would be. I don't know what these things cost, but that seems higher than what we see on a lot of these program items when we hear that they're just for design money. So I guess I'm curious kind of what exactly is the need, number one, and number two, what is different about this design that makes it that much more expensive?
David Braun, what I'd like to do first is ask Alex Bacquier, who's with us, Bureau of Highways Deputy Director, to talk about the need.
Madam Chair, members of the council, thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Alex Bacquier, for the record, with the Department of Public Works. And Councilman Volkey, we are seeking to replace a 1950s era facility in West County. The Bureau of Highways operates 6 staffed maintenance facilities countywide. This is the major hub for the western portion of the county. It is on 5 acres approximately of land that is included in the Odinson Center transit-oriented redevelopment. So we initiated a study to look at replacement locations. Of the 21 locations, we shortlisted and ranked them down to county-owned property in order to maximize co-location opportunities and reduce project cost. The facility that we're looking to replace, to speak to that in particular, it's cramped, it's not code compliant, it doesn't accommodate appropriately men and women in the crews, and it's just functionally become obsolete. And I will note that we had to relocate personnel out of that facility and shift some of our operations based on a significant roof failure and water intrusion that was going on that made it inhabitable. So that interim repair has been completed, but essentially we are on borrowed time with that facility. So that's kind of speaks to the root of why we're pursuing the replacement. The conceptual design plan is located at the Millersville complex, the Millersville landfill. There is existing water and sewer and major roadway access. So those are a couple of key components. It also, we anticipate neighborhood acceptance based on the existing traffic going to that facility that accommodates heavy vehicles and equipment, so that that component is recognized. The site itself will require some significant site work and design, as well as a detailed design document for the facility itself. I can't speak to the specific dollar value of how we got to that number without some additional investigation and consultation with staff, but we can certainly get you some more detailed follow-up.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that explanation and answer. I guess just to follow up on the concept, I get that it's a very old facility. It's functionally obsolete. It's not really working in the way that you need it to work. I guess my question would be, why this year? Is it because of this roof failure? Did this roof failure happen during this current year, and that's what's sort of accelerated this or placed it high up? Is there something imminently happening in the Odinson Town Center that then makes this need to be moved out to allow something else to be redeveloped there? I'm just trying to understand on the timing why this one is necessary right at this moment.
Certainly. I would say that there's nothing that makes this imminently necessary at this moment. Rather, this has been part of a progression over a number of years where the need was identified. You, as a council, previously funded the Odinson replacement study. That study was performed by a consultant that looked at the countywide options and what the best replacement location would be. That came to conclusion. Following that study, then spawned the capital request, which wasn't funded in the past fiscal year, but is funded for design in this current fiscal year. So it's really part of just that larger progression of trying to move the project forward.
Thank you, Mr. Bacchier.
My pleasure.
Mr. Pruski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. Mr. Volke, if you want to go and visit the Odinson Yard, I'd be happy to take you. I've been there once a year over this past 6 years, and I actually was there when they had the roof leak. And it's a horrible building. Unfortunately, they can store vehicles and equipment in certain parts, but to actually work out of that site in the middle of winter, and then when you have rain, it's just not the best spot. And when you asked about the town center, I think that the location of the yard is actually not centrally located. The Millersville landfill would assist, and Mr. Vacchier was mentioning that you're talking about central maintenance. West County is obviously pretty large, and when we're going out, if you're off of 32, closer to the highway, it's a little bit better. Right now, the yard is actually off of 175, and it's in, I don't want to say a residential neighborhood, but it's not the best area as well. So I think there's two reasons that we're trying to do it. But speaking on the condition of the building, if you do want to take a look at it, it's pretty bad. I know that they've tried to do minor repairs, but I think what was stated here is pretty important when you see it visually in terms of the structure itself literally falling apart. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do we have more questions for Mr. Braun? Seeing none, I believe the next, was that the totality of the DPW capital, Mr. Braun? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. I have Mr. Trumbauer listed to speak on behalf of the county executive, page 19A. And he's coming forward.
Hi there, Council. Chris Trumbauer with the County Exec's Office. Is this live? Can you hear me? See some nodding of the heads, so that's good. So it's my pleasure to walk you through the handful of projects that are associated with the County Exec's Office. In this, I'll direct your attention to page 19. And if you have any questions, I'm sure Naomi will be able to answer them. That was a joke. Did you see Naomi laugh? You could see, even though she was muted. All right, 19 is Baltimore Washington Medical Center. This is the third year of a 4-year commitment. for capital funding, $500,000 a year for their behavioral health expansion. This was a commitment made by the previous administration that we are honoring. So you'll see $500,000 in the FY21 budget, and then again, you'll see $500,000 next year in the fourth and final year. So this is funded according to the program. If you flip on to the next page, page 20, you will see a very similar project. This is for Anne Arundel Medical Center, and similarly, this is for their new family medical center project. It's a 16-bed inpatient mental health facility. And again, you will see a $500,000 capital contribution here. This is the second year of a 5-year commitment. So you will see similar funding in the out years in 22, 23, and 24. This is funded according to the program. Next project is page 21, the Ralph Bunche Community Center. This was a request that the county executive made to Governor Hogan in the state budget, and the governor graciously included it in his capital budget. So what you see in the budget book is a $300,000 contribution, but if you look at your B page of 21B, you will see that the entirety of that amount is state grant. So there's no county funding in this project. This is a pass-through grant that will go to help do some renovations and reconstruction of the Ralph Bunche Community Center, which is in South County. And we thank Governor Hogan for his support on that. Now I'm going to need you to skip the next page and go straight to page 23. And you'll see our final project is the Defenders Memorial. So this is the memorial that is being designed and will be built downtown in the city of Annapolis for those that were killed in the Capitol Gazette shooting a couple years ago. Similar to the Ralph Bunche project, this was a request that County Executive Pittman made to the governor for funding in his capital budget, and the governor graciously included this. So again, if you look on your B page, you will see $300,000 of funding, but the entirety of that funding is in other state grants. The location of this is proposed to be downtown Annapolis on Compromise Street across from the Annapolis Waterfront Hotel. The city is doing some work putting a pumping station there next to the Newman Playground, if folks are familiar with that area. And the design or the memorial will go in that same area. There's a small little pocket park there. That completes our 4 projects, and Naomi would be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volkey, District 3. Mr. Trumbauer, I guess one of the things that I'm curious about, I appreciate that the administration has honored the previous administration's commitment on the mental health upgrades at Baltimore, Washington, and Anne Arundel Medical Center. And I guess my question would be this. In the public safety budget, we heard that we needed a new central holding and processing parking lot. We're going to spend about $1.7 million to create that. The reason we need that is because we, as I understand it, having gone out there and looked at it, the detention center is not being allowed to use in any larger capacity parking over at the hospital. Why is it that we are subsidizing the expansion of the medical center's 16-bed mental health unit to the tune of $2 million, actually $2.5 million, and over the rest of this capital program, $2 million, when we're turning around and spending $1.7 million to build this parking lot? It would seem to me like if we're going to give that, we should be getting something in return. And I'm not entirely clear on what that return is, other than I know that they're expanding the mental health facility that they have, which is great. But I think that that need exists whether we were subsidizing it or not. There's a profit motive there. So if you can speak to me about any of the policy rationale for why we're doing that, I'd appreciate it because it might help me understand this better.
Well, sure. Thank you. Chris Trumbauer with the County Exec's Office. So, I mean, we don't treat the capital program as a bartering system. I mean, there's a need for this mental health facility. Again, I think you're speaking specifically specifically about the Anne Arundel Medical Center, which that was last year was the first year of that. So that was not a previous commitment by the previous administration. But they had a need. They made an ask to the administration, similar to what BW Hospital Center had done previously, for capital support for their inpatient program. After consultation with our health department, we decided that was a worthwhile investment for the county to make because it does benefit county residents. And similarly, the Baltimore Washington Hospital had gotten support. And so now that Anne Arundel Medical was doing kind of the same thing, it was a little bit of an equity issue. The situation with the parking lot for the detention center, I'd be happy to defer any more specifics to Mr. Braun or someone from DPW, but my understanding of that project is one option was sharing the hospital center parking lot, but that still required a shuttle or it required some other way to do transportation from the detention center to that lot. And the optimal situation is having a lot that's on site, that's on premise, that's much more robust. So it's true that we were looking at whether that would be a potential solution, but after all the options were considered, we went forward with new construction of a parking lot on site. And again, if I'm missing anything, I'd ask Mr. Braun or someone else to jump in and correct whatever I said that was wrong.
David Braun, Public Works. So that's an accurate representation of the parking issue at the detention center. Yes.
And so to follow up, Nathan Volke again. I understand that, yes, as Mr. Trumbauer said, one of the options was a shuttle and using the facility over at Anne Arundel Medical Center to park in their parking garage. And as I'd understood it, they weren't open to that. The Anne Arundel Medical Center was not open to that as a long-term solution to even make that work. So I'm not looking at this as a bartering system. This is not necessarily a quid pro quo. It's simply about being a good partner. And the idea is that if we're partnering with someone on one thing, then I would think that we should be looking to get, a partnership in return. So I don't see it as a bartering or as a bargaining system so much as, we're reaching out and trying to help them do something that helps county residents. It'd be nice if they could turn around and help the county.
Did we have any other questions for Mr. Trumbauer and these county executive sponsored projects? Seeing none, thank you for being with us, Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Council.
We will move forward in our afternoon's presentations. Mr. Braun, my list shows roads, bridges, and traffic.
Yes, ma'am. That's the intent. So that I think we have some other folks that will be joining me. I'll be doing the initial walkthrough the projects, and as we have questions or whenever you have questions, representatives of the Bureau of Highways, the Bureau of Engineering, and the Office of Transportation can be available to get us as much information as we can to answer the questions.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So again, David Braun, Department of Public Works. The roads and bridges Class H projects begin on page 119. The first project there is Town Center Boulevard to Reese Road, an extension of the existing Town Center Boulevard to get up to Reese Road. This is actually a project that has been part of the program for many, many years. Included an initial study over 10 years ago of an alignment. Recently, this is through Fort Meade property, and recently the Fort entered into a lease known as a EUL with a private developer for the development of the property around this road. And as part of that, both the Fort and the developer have agreed to work with the county to try to work out an alignment for this road. We've currently been doing a feasibility study to identify the alignment. what you see in the request now, beginning in FY21, is the actual design cost, and then some land cost and construction cost in 22 and 23 to get that road completed. The next project, page 120, is the Cape St. Clair Road widening. Project was completed in this last year, and it's showing a deappropriation of $106,000. Chesapeake Center Drive also is a project completed this year, showing a deappropriation of $73,000. The next project on page 122 is the road resurfacing project. That is per the program overall, other than an increase of $1 million in FY21 to try to help the program stay on track with its goals for the overall county project. There is a list of the work included under this project in the appendix on page 12 that's in the documents that has been presented. There's also a street list that didn't get printed but should have at the end of the appendix, and we can get that to you for the specific roads that will be proposed for FY21. Next is the major bridge rehab, which is a multi-year project, again, with various types of work on the bridges in the county. Funding is per the program. A list of the projects and the status of those projects is on page 12 of the appendix. A road reconstruction related to some extent the road resurfacing and masonry reconstruction for the Bureau of Highways program. Also showing a $750,000 increase for FY21, and then per the program in the out years, as well as the masonry construction increase of $200,000 in FY21. The list of areas to be included in that project are on page 13 in the appendix. All of those increases for FY21 are an effort to try to keep the program meeting its overall long-term goals for the roads in the county. Page 127, the Sidewalk Bikeway Fund. Funding is per the program. The list of the projects and both underway and the anticipated projects or recommended projects from the Office of Transportation are shown on page 14 of the appendix. I will mention, I think it has been brought up in the Board of Education's discussions. This is one that this priority list combined with a priority list that the Board of Education gives us for school sidewalk replacement, which is a separate capital project, are coordinated, and we get as many of those done as we can within the funding we have. We have started discussions with the board on the best way to address the longer term issues with new construction, new schools they're doing, and how adjacent road improvements and sidewalk improvements can be done related to those that are beyond what the school board usually includes on their property for their projects. Next project is the Catherine Avenue widening, another one that was completed this year, showing a deappropriation of $53,000. Then the Pasadena Road improvements. That project is complete, other than some minor punch list items that are still being addressed in the field. We're requesting an additional $207,000 for FY21 to address final costs, including contractors' estimates, consultants' fees, and utility costs. And discussions with all of those entities are still ongoing before those costs are finalized. Page 130 is the Riva Road at Governor Bridge Road project. Asking for 1.447 million this year as final funding to address the current cost estimates. We anticipate this project should be bid late summer, early fall this year. Utility relocations are underway at this time. They're supposed to be done by the end of the year. And we're still working with the public on this one for methods of how we're dealing with the detour issues that get raised when we are working on this construction and what has to happen to change the elevations of the intersection during construction. Page 131, Magathie Bridge Road, bridge over the Magathie River, asking for $1.098 million in FY21 based on the updated construction cost estimate. This project is ready to bid within a matter of months here this summer. Also, next project that will be bid this summer is Harwood Road Bridge over Stockett's Run, with a request for $547,000 in FY21 based on the current cost estimates. The Furnace Avenue Bridge over Deep Run, asking for $207,000 in FY21 based on the current cost estimates. One thing I'll point out on this one, you'll see there's no actual construction funds shown on this project. There had been in the past in FY23. This is the first of a handful that I will mention, and then we can talk again later. That the construction funding, because of the uncertainties of the scope and cost of various bridge projects, when we're still in the early stages of the design work, have been removed from the individual projects and placed into what's being called the bridge construction placeholder, so that rather than try to come up with estimates that are unknown and very wildly over the year to year based on what the anticipated scope as we go through this design and get comments from state and federal reviewers. It was just felt that a cleaner way to do that was to get the specific projects funded for design and land acquisition where needed. And then as we have a better scope identified, we can pull the construction money out of that placeholder and put it back into the individual project. The next project is page 134, the transportation facility planning, funded per program. The list of projects that under that parent project is shown on page 15 of the appendix. Wason Road, over Davidsonville Branch project was completed in February, showing a de-appropriation of $254,000 on that one. The O'Connor Road Bridge over Deep Run, requesting an additional $290,000 for land costs and some additional design funds in FY21. This is another one that has had the construction cost that was originally shown in FY22 and 23 taken out of this project and put into the placeholder project until we can get a better handle on the actual scope, and in this case the actual location of this bridge, as it may be shifted somewhat from where it is now. Polling House Bridge Road over Rock Branch, requesting $137,000 in FY21 based on the updated design costs and land costs. Page 138, the Riva Bridge tile repairs project has been completed and showing a de-appropriation of $16,000. Pet improvement on SHA roads is per the program. The list of projects under this one are shown on the appendix and on page 15. The Arundel Community College to B&A Trail connector Project is actually under construction, requesting an additional $42,000 based on the costs as they've been updated through the project, and looking to finalize that project here shortly. Page 141, the Severn Harmon TEDNet. This is a project that is funded entirely by the video lottery funds through the LDC. There was no appropriation from LDC on this project in FY21. The increase we show in 22 and 23 will be requested from the LDC over the next year, and that is basically to cover construction costs for two of the larger projects that are currently under design, and first of which should be ready for construction in FY22 and the next one in FY23. Next project is the Arundel Mills LDC Roads, another project funded by video lottery funds. That is, again, per the program at $500,000 per year. ADA right-of-way compliance, again, is per the program. List of projects is included on page 17 of the appendix. Hanover Road corridor improvements. We're asking for the $6 million roughly for FY21, which is the remainder of the land costs. We're in the process of the design of this breakout project for the Hanover Road improvements that extends from Ridge Road to New Ridge Road. The addition of this funds would complete funding of design and land acquisition for the project. McKendree Road over Lions Creek, showing final design costs in FY21 and construction in FY22. This is one that we've started on and have identified some maintenance and structural issues in the area of the culvert at this point, and we're working to both maintain those on a regular basis now, plus get this project designed and on the street so the facility can be upgraded. Tenured Springs Lane extension, asking for $687,000 for FY21. That's based on the updated cost estimates. This is upgrading the road that was built by a developer from the Tenured Springs Lane dead end out to Solly Road. They built it to minimum standards, and this will upgrade the road to a county standard road all the way out to Solly Road. Next project on page 147 is Governor Bridge Road over Patuxent River. The additional funding here is in FY23 for construction. That would just be the county share of construction. This is a project that is under Prince George's County and their federal bridge program that we have a cost sharing agreement as it crosses the county line. We are still working with Prince George's County to identify which alternative of the feasibility study that was done will actually be pursued. There were differences between the two counties' recommendations that we have some discussions upcoming to try to resolve with PG County. Next project on 148 is the Monterey Avenue sidewalk improvements. That extends from Odinson Road to June Drive, just near the Odinson Elementary School. This is showing additional costs in FY21 for design and land, and then construction in FY22. This project has gone from simply a sidewalk project to including a somewhat significant storm drain requirement in order to make the drainage work once the sidewalk is put in, which then brings conflicts with all of the existing water, sewer, and gas utilities that are in Monterey Avenue. So we've been working on that and identifying the best way to get that design done. It's also resulted in the stormwater management for this project will end up being an upgrade of the existing pond up across Odinson Road from the elementary school. Next project, page 149, is Race Road, Jessup Village. On that one, we are deferring the remaining construction funds from FY21 to FY22 based on the current project schedule. And we are continuing discussions with SHA on that for the best way to finance and manage that project in conjunction with the other work that SHA is doing out in that area. Page 150 is the Brockbridge Road, the Little Patuxent, the bank erosion issues. We've updated cost estimates for FY21 based on the results of the alternative study, which will basically leave most of the road in place, but we'll do in-stream and embankment improvements to alleviate the erosion that's going on, as well as help as much as we can within that project, the existing drainage problems out there. Page 151 is the alley reconstruction project. That is per program. A list of the alleys included in the upcoming work is on page 17 of the appendix. Page 152, Maryland 170 widening. We have deferred that. Last year included $2 million in FY21. We've moved that back to FY22 based on SHA's status of their project, as well as increased the amount to show the county's interest to SHA to try to get this project done. The $5 million shown is estimated to be half of the construction cost, 50%. Page 153, Jumpers Hole Road improvements funded for design beginning in FY23. We have updated cost estimates on that project. Page 154, the Maryland 214 and Lock Haven Road. Funding has increased at the same time as a result of scope increases on this one. The study that had been ongoing under transportation facility planning for this area has basically shown that just doing an intersection project doesn't get us much improvement. So this is now including the work between 468 and Lock Haven Road, the improvements for that area that were included in the study that was done. We are currently working with SHA to determine whether there is interest and possibility of shared funding and possible project management on this project. Page 155, the transit improvements is per program. Page 156, the transportation placeholder is showing 19 million plus in FY24. That is basically the remaining uncommitted transportation PPI funds shown there. Next is the Odinson area sidewalks. This is the installation of sidewalks on one side of Hammond, Money, and Higgins roads, providing access to Arundel Middle School. Have an updated cost estimate resulting in an increasing additional funds shown for FY21. Currently estimated construction to be completed in calendar year 22 for that project. The next project, the next three are new bridge projects that have been identified. First one is Hanover Road over Deep Run. This bridge was constructed in 1958. Is rated in fair condition, which at this time it makes it eligible for the federal bridge program cost share. The fund you see for FY21 and 22 are the initial design, scope, and possible land costs. Construction costs for this would be handled through the, for the out years would be through the bridge construction placeholder program. Conway Road over Little Patuxent River, another fair condition bridge that is therefore eligible for federal bridge program cost share. This one was constructed in 1966. And then Jacobs Road, which was constructed in 1974, is also in fair condition, so eligible for the federal bridge program. Construction costs for FY25 for this one are shown in the bridge construction placeholder. And then the next project on page 161 is actually the bridge construction placeholder project that is currently showing 7.5 million in each year beginning in FY23. The intent would be as actual construction costs are identified once design plans and programs are completed, that those funds would be transferred or moved, shown in the individual line items. There wouldn't actually be any expenditures out of this project. The next handful of projects here are the new projects recommended by the Office of Transportation. First is the Patrol Transportation Center, which has had a study completed previously through the Office of Transportation with options of either using Westfield Mall or the Harry Truman Park and Ride site. The costs that we've shown here are for one site. If there are questions about that and these other new projects, I think Ramon can address them as we get to that through the questions. Next is the Wall Chapel Road improvement. This is a series of pedestrian-friendly improvements on Wall Chapel Road from Maryland 3 out to Maytime Avenue, which is the results of a planning study that's been underway the last couple of years. This would fund the design, land acquisition, and construction for those improvements. Page 164 is Route 2 improvements. What is shown here is the addition of a third northbound lane from US 50 to Maryland 648 and Arnold. Funding is shown anticipating a cost share with SHA for 50% of the construction costs. The Jennifer Road shared use path would be on the north side of Jennifer Road from Admiral Drive to Pavilion Parkway. This would be across that same area we were discussing earlier, across Jennifer Road from the fire station and the detention center up to the road, which is the entrance to Arundel Medical Center. Page 166 is the Route 3 improvements. This is to provide a third lane in each direction along Route 3 from Maryland 175 to St. Stephen's Church Road. There would obviously be discussions on this with SHA for funding and management issues. The last of the new projects is a safety improvement on SHA roads, which is requesting $250,000 per year to provide somewhat minor compared to the Route 2, Route 3 type projects, but minor safety improvements on various state roads through the county. The rest of the projects, let's see, road agreement with developers, charge against road and bridge closed projects, Maryland 214, 468. No fundings requested. The Road and Bridges project plan, page 172. There is a list of current projects. I believe it's just one at this time that's being done out of the funding that we have. That list is on page 15 of the appendix. Brockbridge Road at Maryland 198, no additional funding requested. Bidding the right turn lane project on northbound Brockbridge Road at that intersection. We hope to be bidding that by the end of the year. Utility relocations are underway for this project. as well as right-of-way discussions and land negotiations for both that, and then the extension of sidewalk, which would be a second phase of this project that is anticipated to be bid in the spring of 21. Odinson Grid Streets is proceeding in design. And the last one is Maryland 175, or the Maryland 175 sidewalks, which is on page 175. This is on the south side of Maryland 175 from Sappington Station Road to Maryland 170. We're finalizing an MOU with SHA now for SHA to do the design of this project. Preliminary estimate is that the completion of this should be in the calendar year of 22. That's the list of the projects. Be glad to answer whatever questions come up as a result of that.
Sure. I see Miss Lacy has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My question is about whether there's an interrelationship in the planned projects around the Hanover Road construction and the bridges around that area, and whether there's a certainty, I guess, in the funding sources.
I don't believe there's any relation between the bridge that we've just identified and the corridor project. The bridge work needs to be done. If SHA would be moving quicker with their project, including that ultimate interchange at 295 with Hanover Road, that could delete this bridge and have to be done again with a new bridge. But at this point, they don't even have that funded in their long-term plans and haven't included it in their discussions. So the bridge and our road project have been very separate so far.
Thank you. And I did mean interdependence, not interrelationship. Thank you.
Mr. Volkey has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volkey, District 3. Mr. Braun, just my first question is about the Jennifer Road shared use path. What is that exactly? Can you give a little more detail on that? It looks like it would run between the hospital, I guess that Pavilion Parkway they have, and Admiral Drive there. Is that to service the community that's on Admiral Drive so they can walk to and from the hospital?
It's part of the bigger picture trail plans. If I can, I might see if Mr. Robinson from the Office of Transportation can maybe address that.
Sure.
Good afternoon. This is Ramon Robinson with the Office of Transportation. Councilmember Bucky, that is correct. It is to make that connection that you just spoke of, and then the other part of it is the connection that you'll have between the Poplar Trail and the South Shore Trail. So the goal is to have a pedestrian and bicycle connection or network that kind of goes all the way around. That was one of the connections that was identified and moved that around.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Jessica Hare, District 7. Looking at page 154 on the Maryland 214 in Lock Haven, I agree, having looked at the transportation reports and things, that just trying to change that intersection and put in a left turn lane really isn't going to do much. So then the additional funding, I mean, the changes in the description from the prior year don't really seem to suggest any actual scope changes. Are we making that project bigger and sort of looking at widening and other sorts of things like the transportation report had recommended?
David Braun, Public Works. Yes, the previous scope of that is actually, I think, shown in the change from prior year on the B page, which was just for improvements at the intersection. So the language now has been changed to include the additional westbound travel lane from 468 to Lock Haven Road. So that's the genesis of where everything else is changing, adding that into, and then the cost and management of that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Jessica here, District 7. I was confused because it says on my sheet, it says change in scope none, but I hear you where you're saying the description up top. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
I believe Mr. Volkey has another question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volkey, District 3 again. Mr. Braun, one of the projects that I think was inadvertently excluded from the capital program was regarding the Mountain Road Corridor Revitalization Phase 1, which had been in last year's capital improvement program, but was not included in this year's capital improvement program. At least the page wasn't, but it should have been. But it looks like, do you have that in front of you? I just want to make sure you have the information before I ask the question.
Yes, I do. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So looking at that project, I mean, obviously that was a big project in my district to the tune of about $22 million. It looks like that's been deappropriated in terms of this year's capital improvement program, as well as the rest of the out years on the capital improvement program, a little over $20 million. So I guess number one, I wanted to understand what the reason was for deappropriating the entire project. And then number two, it looks like we've already spent about $1.3 million. If I look at the second page where it shows financial activity, the amount that's been expended. Is that right? Have we spent that much money on this project?
As far as the existing part of the project, we have an MOU with the state for the design of this project, which has encumbered the 1.3 million. So it hasn't all been spent yet, but it is part of an existing agreement to do the initial design work on the project.
Right, and that's advanced as far as presenting it to the community. I mean, I know my office was there. We got to see what that project looked like. There were sketches, drawings, everything. It was presented for comment. So I'm just trying to understand how much money we've, and I don't say this to you, but frankly, that we've wasted on this project now that we've defunded it. How much has been spent? I want to know that number first.
Well, so if you look, let me make sure I'm at the right spot. The same chart that shows on the financial activity, as of April 1st, 2020, the expended part is what's actually been spent. So that's just over $300,000.
Okay, and then the encumbered, do you anticipate that that'll be spent?
Well, if we are still working with SHA through that MOU on this initial design phase, probably pending a go, no-go type decision on the project once there is that part of the design is further along and we have more feedback from the community as to whether it's still desired or not. So some of that will be, but we certainly wouldn't be going beyond that MOU work without more discussions with the public and obviously internally as whether the project should continue.
Excuse me, while we do have Mr. Trumbauer who's willing to chime in if that would help Mr. Volkey with his question. And there he is.
Hi there, Chris Trumbauer with the county exec. Is the floor over to me, Madam Chair?
Yes, sorry.
Thanks. When you transfer over, you lose like 4 seconds, so I wasn't sure what I missed. Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Volkey. So I'd also, if Mr. Robinson is still there, he may have something to add after my remarks. But I will say that this project was the source of some discussion by the administration and the budget team. And our understanding is that the project was kind of portrayed and there was a couple community meetings out there, and that some of the feedback from the community and specific the business community in that area was unfavorable. And so we didn't want to put a large project forward that was not ready to go and didn't have the support at that time. I believe that's the project that we're talking about, but if Ramon or Alex wants to correct me,
I can just confirm, Nathan Volke again, Mr. Trumbauer, what you're saying is correct, because I've talked to the Pasadena Business Association, and I know that there were concerns about the way this project was designed, specifically with the medians where you could not make left or right-hand turns going in particular directions down Mountain Road. There were some serious concerns from the business community that it would impede the flow of traffic into their businesses, and they didn't like that in terms of the design. So I get that piece was a problem. I guess I'm just trying to understand why the entire project was scrapped as opposed to potentially looking at different design options.
So this is Ramon Robinson from the Office of Transportation. Councilmember Volke, you're absolutely right. Part of this is because based on the study that was done probably back in 2015 or so, that kind of gave us what the wayward design of this was going to be. That actually changed because now there's different criteria that the state is using as it relates to how we develop the purpose and need of the project. So those new implementation of that new structure that was kind of presented to the community was different from the way that it was prior to. And so it's almost as if it's a new project. And so that's kind of how it's still along the same corridor, but it's new in the sense that the purpose and need of the project has now changed. And it's changed to meet these new criteria that are now associated with this new purpose and need. And a lot of it is based around safety.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Nathan Volke, District 3. Mr. Robinson, thank you for that explanation. That's helpful. I guess my follow-up to that would be, is there money that is still required in this budget to be appropriated to allow those studies and those safety concerns that are now a major piece of this to be considered and allow the planning to continue in whatever different iteration this may take?
Ron Robinson, Office of Transportation. I believe that there's the funding that is there, the current, and working with the state should be enough to kind of move this forward. That is how it's kind of being couched as it relates to just the design and the redevelopment of the purpose and need.
Okay, and Nathan Volke again, Mr. Robinson. Just to follow up on that, do you have any anticipated construction schedule, design schedule, thoughts of how this would fit into the capital improvement program over the next few years? Because again, this program this particular project had funding in FY22 of $16 million. It had $3.7 million this year. All of that has been deappropriated and moved elsewhere. So knowing that once something is gone, it's often hard to get back. I'm just trying to understand how that's going to fit in the future.
So, Ramon Robinson, Office of Transportation. Thank you, Councilmember Volke, for that question. I think that ideally, think of it just like a transportation facilities planning project, where the first thing that we do is we actually go through and we do a full plan out of what actually needs to happen and what takes place there.
Okay.
So yeah, see that, and that kind of helped us to define.
Mr. Ramon, can you Mr. Ramon, you keep freezing. We're losing some of your audio.
Okay, can you hear me now? Everybody?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So ultimately, it is in a sense almost like redoing it. So we've got to figure out, okay, what is the new purpose and need? What is the plan going to look like? And then that'll kind of help us to determine later on down the line, in conjunction with the state, as to what the needs are going to be from a financial standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions about road projects? Oh, Mr. Volke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volke again. So again, this question actually might be better for you, Mr. Robinson. I'm not sure, but I did note that something in the facilities, the transportation master plan that we've talked about a lot, at least in my area, is the Jumpers Toll Road between Route 2 and 177. I know that's a troubling area of the district. There's been a lot of development there. The roads haven't really kept up in terms of the traffic flow over there. And it's something that I've heard from my constituents in that area quite a bit about. I noticed that that was not included in the budget this year. That was a project I'd asked about last year during the budget hearings, but I see that that again hasn't made it into the capital improvement program. I just wanted to sort of get the sense of where that falls in terms of the overall transportation plan and when we think we might get to this.
So this is Ramon Robinson again, Office of Transportation. Thanks again, Councilmember Boki, for that question. So we did go through, or we are in the process of finalizing the study for a jumper hole there. So once we get the study finalized, again, we will be able to kind of move it through. Some of the kind of the information that we have been receiving is just kind of very similar to what was happening at 177 as it relates to the design and the needs as it relates to the bicycle and pedestrian connections on Jumpers Hole there, and making sure that it fits with the community as well. One of the things that we do know that is an important connection because there is a school that's close to there, and we definitely want to make sure that we have school connection based, again, I'm always go back to Move and Arundel. So based on Move and Arundel, like how we identify where we wanted to have these bicycle and pedestrian connections. So it is important, but we are going through the planning process to make sure that it can be included moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. So to follow up on that, Nathan Volke, District 3 again. So it's not in the capital improvement program right now. Do you require funds to be able to move forward with this project?
Ramon Robinson, Office of Transportation again. In order for it to move forward, just like everything else, you want to get the study completed first, and then you start to go into the other steps of it, kind of moving forward. So complete the study first, and then you can move it into, because the study is going to kind of give us a heavier indication as to what needs to be done, and then you can move forward that one.
And so, Mr. Robinson, Nathan Volke again, when do you expect the study will be done? I know you said it was close, but do you think we'll be seeing it this year so that this is in next year's capital improvement program?
I would, before these Ramon Robinson, Office of Transportation, before these interesting times, I would probably say, yeah, it's probably easier that we would get it done. But I think, it should be, but I don't want to make any promises. But it should be progressing forward.
Appreciate it, Mr. Robinson. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions regarding roads and bridges? I don't see any more questions from my council colleagues. Mr. Braun, is everyone good moving forward?
Madam Chair, Ms. Rodvian.
Oh, excuse me, Ms. Rodvian.
Madam Chair, I wanted to make a motion to take a short, maybe 5-minute recess.
Everybody,
Second.
we have a second.
Volke.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the council, this is a good time to recess for everybody. We'll come back. How about we say 2:55? Council is now in recess until 2:55. Thank you. Remind everybody not to leave the meeting, just
Thank you for entertaining my motion for a recess. I figured we could all use just a brief little break.
I agree. We're going to resume our meeting. It's 2:55 with presentations from the Department of Public Works. We'll get everybody gathered. Mr. Braun, when Mr. Braun is with us again, he'll introduce the next department.
Thank you. David Braun, Department of Public Works. Still somewhat related to roads first before we move on. The traffic control class of projects begins on page 176. Most of these are consistent per the program. There are project lists on pages 18, 19, and 20 of the appendix to the capital budget book. The two additional costs that are shown. One first is for the guardrail project on page 176, which is showing an increase in FY21 of $120,000. And that is primarily to address the backlog of projects that the Bureau of Highways has on that. The other increase is on page 184, the auto flood warning at bridges, requesting $1.9 million in FY21 to complete this project. We have phase one of this at 4 sites is somewhat under construction, with the exception that the contractors can't get into town to finish the installation because of the coronavirus restrictions. They're from out of town. But the additional funding is as a result of actually having come up with a better or firm and final idea of how we're getting these things installed at the various facilities, including the addition of fiber at many of them, and the electric and the cameras that are being installed at to help monitor the situations. So for the traffic control class, that's all I have to present on those. If there are any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Braun regarding the traffic control? Miss Lacy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Braun, for bridges that are slated to get these auto flood warnings, and with the infrastructure required for that, if in the future we were going to do improvements to these particular bridges, does any of that new infrastructure get retained or reused?
It would. I don't believe that any of the ones we're talking about right now are projects that are in our at least 6-year plan. But if there are, we would certainly make that so we're not ripping it out again and having to reinstall it. Yes.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions regarding traffic control projects, Mr. Braun, so we can move forward.
Okay, thank you. Next, we will move to stormwater management and WPRP projects. I believe Eric Michelson will be joining us and will be doing the presentation for this portion.
Right, thanks, David. Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with you this afternoon. We're going to start with the Q class, which is the old water quality improvements class. There is one new request, which is the Shipley's Choice Dam Rehab, page 216. We're asking for another $707,000 to complete the finalization of that. The construction of West Benfield Road, which is sort of phase 1, is anticipated to be done next month, middle of next month. And then the final phase is the removal of the dam, which we're hoping to complete this summer. Of that request, I'll just point out that $207,000 is a reimbursement essentially from BG&E for utility relocations. And the reason for the request overall is just both unforeseen weather conditions as well as utility conflicts that we ran into in construction. I'll stop there if there's any questions on that project and then go into the B class. If that's all right.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Michelson? I don't see any at this time, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll just jump right into the B class. There's a handful of projects here. There is a additional amount above the programmed request of about $1.4 million. All of that amount is the recognition of state grants that we've received for projects that we've got going into the ground and is offsetting WPRF bonds. The first 3 projects are requesting increases as programmed. The first is B5516, our culvert and closed storm drain rehab project. That is page 412. That project's requesting $4.7 million to continue to tackle the backlog of culvert and closed storm drain repair work that the county has ongoing. This is handled by our infrastructure maintenance division within the Bureau of Highways. The next request is B5517, which is our emergency storm drain account, which is requesting $2.3 million per program, again, to address emergency issues associated with the conveyance and closed storm drain network. And then the additional next request is B5518, which is our storm drainage and stormwater management infrastructure countywide account. This is requesting $1 million as programmed. And again, this is being used for water quality as well as storm drainage efforts for larger scale projects countywide. I could go through the next 20 or so projects, but I'd like to, if I could, simply explain what's going on there. What we're really doing there is shifting around prior authorization from previous fiscal years to remove funds where projects did not expend all of those dollars and shift those funds into projects where we had construction shortfalls as a result of the way the previous program had been set up. So there's a zero sum essentially in terms of all those shifts that you see below. Madam Chair, I don't know if you want me to go through case by case or if that's sufficient explanation there. You can see that, again, there's some decreases, some increases, but it's all just moving around prior authorization at this point. Do you have a preference?
Sure. I don't have a preference. I would defer to my colleagues if they have any questions regarding anything you've reported so far. And I am not seeing any.
Okay, well,
so
there's a couple.
How would you like to proceed?
Yeah, there's a couple other things I'd like to point out. One is that we've modified the definition of our WPRP land acquisition account, which is B561000. That's page 439. We have expanded the definition of this project to include the allowance of the acquisition of flood-prone or otherwise environmentally sensitive properties. We've, Councilwoman Pickert, you in particular are aware, we've had conversations about the possibility of the county buying out properties where there's significant ongoing flooding issues as opposed to trying to engineer a solution to those sites. And so this change in the definition, we believe, gives us the ability to set up a program where we could begin to target some of those properties and have a means to acquire them and essentially set them aside as natural resource areas. There is some additional request here, but that's again part of that shifting around that I just described previously. And then the other project I wanted to point out, this existed last year, but we've added another out year funding here is our permit cycle 3 placeholder. This is B577500, page 448. This does not show any new authorization until FY23 and is in anticipation of additional permit requirements that we're likely to have as a result of new stormwater permits from MDE in the future. So we just wanted to put this on the council's radar as well as the administration's radar that there is likely to be additional restoration in the out years that we're going to need to conduct, not asking for any new authorization right now. But as we get closer, probably in the next fiscal year, we will begin to build some granularity into this in terms of the specific projects we were pursuing, but we wanted to have this there so that the council was aware that that was an impending set of requirements. So those are the projects I wanted to point out. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Mr. Volke has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volke, Mr. Michelson, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So last year, I'm just looking at kind of the overview of the Watershed Protection and Restoration Fund projects. And last year, I don't think there was nearly as much moving around as we're seeing this year in terms of the projects. So I guess I don't necessarily want to go line by line because I don't think that's a good use of everybody's time, but there look to be a number of projects where a lot more funding has moved in and other projects where it's moved out. I'll spend some time digging in and trying to figure out kind of what questions I haven't asked them to you specifically. But if you could just give us an overview of generally what projects you're prioritizing in terms of the bigger amounts that we're seeing moving in. One that I just pulled up, for instance, is the PNPP01, which looks like it's the Patapsco non-tidal standalone private ponds, which had a prior appropriation of like $5 million. And now it looks like an additional maybe 4 million, or no, excuse me, another like 2.5 million is going in there. So just that kind of thing. I'm curious what these projects are and what you all have added or are doing in addition.
Sure. So what's happened over the course of the last year and the past couple of years is that as our design plans have gotten more fleshed out, we've been able to really put together tighter engineers' cost estimates for the construction side. And so what we were doing, and you'll see it particularly for the stream projects, but as you point out, that's a pond project. As we've sort of waited to shift the money for construction until we believed that we were, a year or so off from needing to actually expend that money. And so we weren't sort of refining our tweaks over time. And so that's what's going on there. I'd be happy, like you say, if you dig into it and you've got specific questions about the projects that that's going to translate into, I would be happy to provide you that list. I'd also be happy to send the council our GIS-based project map that shows sort of the locations of each of those projects, and within each of these parent projects in terms of what's being proposed as well, to help identify those sites a little more clearly.
I know, speaking for myself, I'd love to see that. So if you can share that, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Michelson? I'm not seeing any. Mr. Michelson, was that the totality of your presentation?
That is the totality of my presentation. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. Mr. Braun, we can move towards your next department.
Thank you. Waste management is next. Rhodey Holthouse should be joining us, who will be giving the presentation for this.
We will take a pause while he moves forward. Or she. Oh, good. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and members of the County Council. Can everyone hear me and see me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you. Rhodey Holthouse, Deputy Director, Department of Public Works, for the record. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Waste Management or N-Class Capital Budget and Program request this afternoon. My remote will follow the budget book and program, and waste management project requests begin on page 292. The first project is N526900 solid waste renovations on page 292. The Solid Waste Enterprise funds the care and maintenance of all Bureau of Waste Management Services facilities. And this is a recurring project used to care for buildings, building systems, roads, and other infrastructure. In FY 2021, our priorities are paving renovations. Our roads are not county maintained roads, so we take care of our own road network. IT upgrades, including fiber network and security. And we're renovating a landfill warehouse building, which includes roof, siding, electrical, mechanical, and plumbing. We're requesting $1.44 million of funding consistent with the program, and we're including funding in FY 2026 as well. The next project is N551100, the Cell 8 closure. So closing a landfill is a regulatory requirement. The project to close disposal Cell 8 was completed, and we are requesting to deobligate $30,000 of prior approved funding in FY 21. The next project is N569800, which is the Millersville Landfill Cell 567 replace cap project on page 294. Cells 5, 6, and 7 were landfill units that were used during the 1980s, and they were capped in the 1990s. About 7 acres of the 50-acre closed area has settled over the past 3 decades. The project to repair the settlement and the underlying components was completed, and we are requesting to deobligate $75,000 of prior approved funding in FY 21. The next project is N578800, which is Millersville Landfill Subcell 9.3 Design and Construction on page 295. That's a new project request to develop the 3rd phase of the 9th disposal area, and we'll continue to develop Cell 9 over the coming decades. We're asking for design funding of $2.1 million in FY 25 and construction funding of $18.9 million in FY 26. The next project is N581800, which is the Millersville Landfill Main Entrance Upgrade project on page 296. Believe it or not, the Millersville Landfill has been operating since 1975. That's 45 years. and much has changed in the Burns Crossing Road corridor in that time. We initiated this project under the solid waste renovation project about a year ago, and we're at schematic design phase at this point, and the engineer's cost opinion suggests a standalone project would be wise based on the funding in the renovation project. Elements of our design include public road improvements currently along Burns Crossing Road, entrance widening to separate landfill customer traffic from county fuel station users, stormwater management, lighting, and signage. And we are requesting $3.648 million for construction in FY21. And again, the design has been completed under the solid waste renovation project. The next project is N581900, which is Millersville Landfill Cell 9 Landfill Gas Collection System Design and Construction on page 297. And this would provide for landfill gas capture components for the new landfill Cell 9 that we're operating. And based on timing of that project, we expect to need those systems in place in FY24. So we're asking for $136,000 in design in FY23 and $1.1 million for construction in FY 2024. And the remainder of the projects in the N class have prior approved funding, but no funding requests for FY21 or future years. So with that, I would be happy to review them or answer any questions about any of the N class projects.
Allison Pickard, Chair. Mr. Volkey has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volkey, District 3. Mr. Holdhouse, thank you for the presentation. My question is about the Millersville landfill main entrance updates. And I guess my question for you would be, why this year? And before anybody needs to ask if I need to visit over to Millersville, I've been there plenty of times. I've been going since I was a kid, so I'm quite familiar with what it looks like. But that being said, if you can just give me a sense for why in this year, with the budget constraints that we're now facing, why this is such a priority, I'd appreciate it, because I think it would help me just to understand where you're coming from and to make sure that we're making good budget decisions.
Sure. So number one, this is relying on the solid waste enterprise for funding, so it's outside of the general fund. But I guess the short answer is, we continue to see growth, obviously, through the corridor, both in the residential traffic that comes through Burns Crossing corridor and also the traffic that uses our facility. So I sort of look at it, if we were and we're an enterprise fund, if we were a business and we were causing those sorts of issues on the public road, the government would ask the business to make improvements. And that's pretty standard. So what we're seeing now is, more traffic that queues up on Burns Crossing Road as a result of landfill customers and the residential drop-off customers. And at times that causes inconvenience for the motoring public. We also now that we have more facility traffic using the fueling station, which is a good use of county resources because we have one of the better filling stations for gas and diesel at our facility. We have more county traffic, and that county traffic, including fire trucks using that fuel facility, often get caught up in the customer traffic trying to enter or exit the facility. So all those kinds of situations we can allay with this capital project. And we can also, again, internalize those costs because they're particular to the fact that we operate a landfill and a recycling center adjacent to that county road.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions at this time? I don't see any more questions from my colleagues regarding that segment. Mr. Holdhouse, did you have more to present?
No, ma'am, unless you would like me to go through any other projects that are in the N class that aren't, where funding is not requested in FY21 or beyond.
I'm not personally seeing a need to discuss the out years, but I don't know if any of my colleagues would like to. I don't see any questions, sir, so.
Okay.
Thank you for being with us. this
Always
afternoon.
available. Thank you very much.
We know where to find you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Braun, we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be water and wastewater. Will be led by Chris Murphy, engineer administrator for water and wastewater.
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and County Council. Chris Murphy, I'm the engineer administrator for utility engineering. I'm going to go through the budget book. We're going to start off with wastewater first. That can be found on page 305 of the budget book. First up is S647500, the Baltimore County Sewer Agreement. We're asking for a budget increase of $577,000, a request for $1.1 million for FY21. This is a project in which we partially fund improvements at the Patapsco wastewater treatment plant, which pays for our portion, along with Baltimore County and Baltimore City. We pay 7.6% of the Baltimore County share for this, approximately 5.16% of all the projects that get done over the Patapsco wastewater treatment plant. The next one is charges against closed projects. We are asking for requesting $154,000 for this project. This fills in needs for things that happen to some of the water and sewer, some of the sewer projects that we do after the project has been closed out. We recently used some of the funds in here, so that we just wanted to replenish it so that we had funds there in case something needed to be fixed. Next up is the S69700. It's the Mayo WRF expansion. Not really an expansion. This is where we actually ended up, we're decommissioning the Mayo treatment plant and the Glebe Heights treatment plant and sending this over to Annapolis. The project is nearly complete. We're just working on the decommissioning now, and that should be, that recently just bid out, and we're de-appropriating $2.5 million based off the current estimates. Next up is the S776700. This is the water strategic plan. We're just asking for out-year funding on that. It's consistent with the program. Next up on page 309 is the central sanitation facility. That's S777200. This is increased for the remaining items in this project, which is the completing the AC upgrades and then finalizing construction of the outdoor storage yard. Once those are done, this project should be closed out. Next up is the S791800, which is the upgrade retrofit SPS project. This is a multi-year project where we upgrade our pump stations in the county. We're asking for $9.2 million, which is consistent with the program. On page 311 is the facility abandonment for wastewater. We're asking for a $340,000 increase for a total of $503,000 this year, based off the current need. We have several projects where we need to demo some old infrastructure that's no longer needed. The Furnace Branch sewer replacement project, we're just shifting funding out a year for this one to FY22. So we're not asking for any funds in FY21 for that one. Next is on page 313 is the S797900 Broadneck WRF upgrade. It's consistent with the program. No additional funds. Construction in FY22. Next up is S798100, the wastewater SCADA upgrade program. This was a software and then an upgrade to the actual SCADA facilities that we have. And this project just recently completed, and we're going to de-appropriate $65,000 from that project. Next is on page 315 is S799200, the Mayo Collection System upgrade. This is a multi-year program that we use. This is for the pump stations in the Mayo system. We're asking for a $150,000 increase based off of the work that needs to get done out of there based off the current estimate.
The next up is S802300 WRF Infrastructure Upgrade Retro Project. This is just consistent with the current program. That funds different improvements at the treatment plants that aren't necessarily major projects. That are on the smaller side, equipment purchases, smaller upgrades. Next is the S803700, the Broadwater ENR project. This one is in performance, and we are de-appropriating $1.445 million on that one. Jennifer Road pump station upgrades. We are de-appropriating $166,000. That one is complete. And then next up on page 319 is the Revere of Each SPS mods. Again, that one is in performance, and we are de-appropriating $14,000 in that one. The Cinder Cove SPS mods, again, that's another project that was complete, and we're de-appropriating $603,000 in that one. Next one is Chesapeake Beach Wastewater Treatment Plant. It's S806000. This is a project for our folks that live down in Rosehaven. This helps fund the Chesapeake Beach Wastewater Treatment Plant where the flow from Rosehaven goes. We pay our small portion to the town of Chesapeake Beach to assist with their improvements there. The next is the SPS facility generator replacement project. That's S806200. This pays for us putting in generators at all the pump stations, or quick connects for portable generator upgrades and equipment. We recently have nearly finished up upgrading all the generator facilities at the pump stations, and we're moving into more of a life cycle program for this project. Before we were sort of playing catch up, so we're actually going to reduce the fund request down from, we were getting about 3.875 million annually down to 2.5 million annually. The next on page 323 is S806900, which is the Rolling Knolls Elementary School sewer extension. This project is in performance, and so we can give back $45,000. Next up is a Tanglewood 2 sewer. This is a petition takeover project, and this is just an increase based off the current estimate. Next up is the S807300 Annapolis WRF upgrade. This is sort of a three-phased upgrade at the Annapolis treatment plant, and so this is the first phase of construction, and is about to get bid out. We are actually going to be move forward some of the phase 2 construction up a year, and so we're actually shifting funds from FY23 to FY22 based off the current schedule, and it actually has some minor savings because of that, and some of the improvements on the design. We were able to eliminate a small pump station, save some money there. Next up is the Broadneck Clarifier Rehab Project. Increase is in this based on the current estimate, requesting $293,000. This project will bid in December with construction to start in the spring. Heritage Harbor sewer takeover. This is a petition project. We're just reducing it based off the current estimate. Next up is the Pine Orchard SPS and Force Main project. It's S807600. This is on page 328. If you may know that we recently took over the Piney Orchard treatment plant from a private developer that owned it, a private entity that owned it. So we took it over. We're not asking for additional funds in FY21. Looks like there's a rounding error of $619. But we are asking for some funds out in FY23 for some headworks improvements that need to get done. And then in S807700 Rockbridge Road sewer replacement project, we're decreasing funds based on the current estimate. This is actually out in construction. When we actually can grid system improvements, we have shifted the monies out here out from FY21 out to FY22, and asked for an increase for this one. Actually started, the original was built off, the original estimate was a preliminary estimate from some information that we had from a project that was probably about 8 or 9 years old. We've actually gone out there and we've done the schematic design report on this now. And it looks like the estimate for the improvements that are needed are going to be more expensive. So that's the reason for the increase on that one. Cattail Creek Forest Main replacement. We've just shifted funding out here to FY22. This is currently in design. This will replace the major force main that runs from Cattail down to the Mill Creek pump station that feeds the Broad Creek area. Next, the grinder pump replacement program. This is just, we're asking for out-year funding consistent with the program. The Broadwater Ops building, this is in construction currently. And we need an additional $400,000 based off the current budget estimate. This is additional staff facilities that are being built that's going to handle some of the additional staff from the Mayo treatment plant decommissioning that I talked about earlier. Edgewater Beach sewer project. This is just, we shifted funding from FY21 to 22. There's a small increase for escalation for that. Pointfield Landing. This is another petition project. This is on page 335. We're asking for an increase of $351,000 based off the current estimate. The Broadwater Grit WRF, Broadwater WRF Grit system replacement. This is consistent with the current program. We're requesting $3.8 million. Construction should begin sometime in summer of 21. The sewer main replacement reconstruction project, X73880. This is on page 337. We're just at, this is one of our major projects that we do for the upkeep of our infrastructure. This is for the gravity sewer and the force mains. We're asking for $11.4 million, which is consistent with the program. Next is the wastewater service connections. We are actually asking for less funds in FY21, but we are increasing funds in the out years in this project. We had a switchover in contractors, and when the new contract was bid out, we think it's going to likely be a little more expensive, but we had a backlog in the current contractor, so we don't actually need as much money this year as we had planned. Next is the wastewater project planning project, and this is our project where we're doing our integrated plan. This is for large wastewater planning for big improvements. This is actually where we're doing our
Mr. Murphy, we've lost your
integrated
audio.
planning project out of this one. Combination of septic to sewer program, outreach, and education. And then I think that's it. After that, they're all just other than that, those two or no, or everything else is consistent with the program. Should I keep continuing?
Your audio speeds up a little bit. We're having a little bit of trouble.
Oh, okay.
Are you prepared? Or is this the stopping point for questions, or do you?
Yeah, I think the remaining projects are all pretty much consistent with the program. I can go through this real quick. Just the state highway relocation for the sewers. That's just consistent with the program. Routine sewer extensions. That's consistent with the program. And the dewatering facilities again. Consistent with the program. So actually, we're not even actually asking for that last one. We're just not requesting funds because that's all completed. So that would be it for the wastewater side.
Okay.
I'm here for questions. And I also have George Miner and James Howard on with me if there's other questions that I can't answer.
Okay, I will let you determine that, Mr. Murphy,
Okay.
but I do see, this is Allison Pickard, Chair D2. Mr. Volke has a question. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volke, District 3. Mr. Murphy, thanks for running through that in an expeditious fashion. Like everybody today, it was well done. So my question starts with the Baltimore County Sewer Agreement Project at the very top of the project class summary listing. That is a very substantial increase in both the overall total cost of the project, but also in the funding for FY 21, 22, and 23. So what changed there that is now accelerated that so much, and why has the cost gone up so much?
So this is, let's say this is the Baltimore City runs the Patapsco's wastewater treatment plant. Baltimore City is sort of the project manager for it. Baltimore County oversees it, and then we pay the Baltimore County the portion for those improvements. The list of improvements that they're looking at doing for FY21 is they are reconstructing their administrative building, and it's roughly a $20 million project for FY21, and I believe that we were asking for roughly $1 million. So we pay $1 million of the $20 million portion, and then the other improvements they have for FY22, they're doing some secondary reactor rehabs, doing their lift station upgrades. They're improving their secondary treatment processes, and they're also doing they're fixing their liquid oxygen facility rehab. They're doing roughly $80 million worth of work at the Patapsco treatment plant, and so we're paying our roughly 5% of those funds.
Okay, and Mr. Murphy, we are obligated to pay that.
So,
oh, sorry.
Only a small, yeah, we're only a small player in this. Yeah, we're only a small player in this, and in that we only do a small portion of the treatment plant capacity.
Okay, yeah, I'd seen in there that I guess our portion of the agreement is something like a little over 6%. So consistent with what you're saying, but we are obligated to spend that. We have no flexibility there. I just want to confirm I understand. Did you hear me?
Oh, we've lost your audio, sir.
Yes. So I'm sorry about that. Yes, I confirm that, yes, we're obligated to pay that.
Okay. And are we consulted in any way on these improvements and whether we agree with the improvements? And if so, how does that work, both in terms of the admin building, but also in terms of the process itself?
It's more in where we receive the invoices to review. It's more of it's sort of the after the fact process. So, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions for Mr. Murphy? Again, this is Allison Pickard, D2. I'm not seeing any further questions at this point. Mr. Murphy, was that the totality of your presentation?
I also have the water presentation too.
Oh, well, I'm ready to hear water. Thank you.
Okay. Chris Murphy, Engineer Administrator for Utility Engineering. Can do the W class now. Start off on page 365. Which is W744400, which is our existing well redevelopment project. This pays for the rehab on a sort of life cycle basis for our 55 wells that we have in the county. The county gets essentially all of our water now from groundwater since we've moved away from Baltimore City. All of our water is groundwater. So this is consistent with the program. We're asking for $2.4 million. And that we do a certain number of wells each year. Depends on the size of the well and where they are, the number that we do, but it's a sort of life cycle replacement rehab. Next is the demo of abandoned facilities. We're de-appropriating $397,000 in this based off of our current backlog and when we'll be ready, but then we're asking for $170,000 in FY22 on that one. The water strategic plan, this pays for strategic planning for the water system. We're just asking for $50,000 in FY21, which is consistent with the program and out-year funding. Next up is the W787 800 fire hydrant rehab. This pays for upgrade, basically painting and replacement of fire hydrants. We're asking for roughly $500,000, which is a $150,000 increase. This is based off costs are going up for these projects. And this is a life cycle. We'll repaint. Next up is Crofton Meadows 2 expansion, phase 2. This will take our Crofton Meadows plant up from 15 million to 20 million gallons per day capacity. And this is, we just shifted funding out to FY 22 and 23 based off the current schedule. Next up is the Route 32 transmission main, which will go through Fort Meade. This project, finally, I think we're finally starting to get some movement through the fort.
Sir, could you repeat that? We lost your audio.
Okay. Did you hear that this is transmission main 32 through Fort Meade? Did you hear that part? Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. So this is W801 600. This is a water main that we need to cut through the Fort Meade property along Route 32. This will tie the Maryland City side of the water system over to the Crofton Meadows side. Right now, Maryland City and Jessup are basically served by one line through there. So if that breaks, we have major issues. So we're trying to get this additional feed through Fort Meade, and we recently had some movement with the fort to be able to actually get out there and do some surveying out there. So I'm hoping that project moves forward at a quicker pace. Next up is the W803 300, the water infrastructure upgrade retro. We're just asking, we're decreasing funds based off the need, and we're asking for FY26 funding. East-West transmission main project. We currently have an efficiency study going on to sort of see if there's ways that we could improve this, the piping requirements for this project to reduce costs down. We've shifted funding out based on the schedule. There is call it a sort of a bottleneck in the northern part of the county for our water mains. We have two feeds that come up, one from Crofton Meadows and one that comes up from Arundel, and they sort of get bottlenecked up in there, and it's difficult to move water back from one side to the other. In the past, we had a feed from Baltimore City, which did some of that progress, but we've moved on to become independent from Baltimore City as far as our water supply, and so that we need this piping to improve that flow. Next up is W804000, the Broad Creek Water Treatment Plant expansion. Where this is consistent with the program, no changes there. We're currently under design for the treatment plant upgrades, which is they're upgrading the existing treatment process, and we're also putting in a new well and a transmission main part of this project, and those are currently under bid, out to bid. Next up is the New Cut Water Treatment Plant. So this is another project that has to deal with the sort of the Millersville area. This is for future planning, future construction of a new water treatment plant out in the sort of the Millersville area. We need to, we're looking for getting a 10 to 12 acre parcel of land. We do not want to wait till later on to get this. We think find that it's need to get it now, as land will become in short supply when it's actually needed in roughly 2030 timeframe. So we would like to get it now so that we can construct it later on. So we just shifted the funding out. We're currently doing a siting study to look for possible locations for this. Next up is the water facility emergency generators. This is similar to the pump station emergency generator project, and we are sort of finishing up with that. We've shifted, we currently have enough funding for FY21, and we've just shifted out the funding out to FY22 to finish up this project. Horsey Lime System Upgrade Project. This is an increase of $154,000 based off the current estimate. This will bid out this summer. Next up is the Coriander Place water main extension. We're decreasing this based off the current estimate. Construction is scheduled to actually start soon. We have a contractor under contract, and so we can hopefully get started on that soon. Banbury water main extension. This is increased based off the current estimate. As we've been moving through design on this, we've sort of taken a more detailed approach looking at this. And I think before the estimate was based off of just doing open cut to put this line in. We're actually going to be doing some directional drill to put the line in because it goes underneath the golf course portion that we need to tie back into our treatment plant. And so the budget for this is increased to $600,000. Next up is the water meter replacement upgrade project. We're just asking for funds consistent with the program, and we asked for out-year funding for FY26. Edgewater Beach project. This is the counterpart to the Edgewater Beach sewer project, and this is an increase based off the current estimate. And we've shifted funding out there to be consistent with the Edgewater Beach sewer project. Next up is the Arundel water treatment plant filter rehab. This is consistent. We're asking for $7.5 million, which is consistent with the program. This should bid an award in June timeframe of 2021. Next is our AMI water meter program. This is actually a new request for this year. This is only for the engineering portion of this. We recently finished a business case analysis to see if this was going to be make a positive cost improvement to the county water operations. This is actually going to be putting in smart meter technology, essentially for constituents. This is, I guess similar to what they have if you ever used your BG&E, where they have the smart meters. You can see how much. In this case, you'll see how much water you used. It'll let the county know, hopefully help with leak detection. If we see a increase in water usage at a property, we might be able to let the homeowners know sooner rather than a discovery later on when the bill comes out later on in the month. It has a whole bunch of benefits for us and also for the user. This is only for the portion so far to do the engineering portion of this. The meters that we're putting in the water meter replacement project, those are compatible with any one of these systems that we would put in. When we actually do get into the construction part of it, when we talk construction, potentially radio towers or connecting with the radio towers that some of the other departments have, and also maybe using our elevated tanks. So it's sort of the communications part of this, the software, and then sort of the business upgrades to the billing system. So those will be some additional costs that we will have. But the actual meter costs, those for the most part will be going in with the meter upgrades, unless we look to escalate this in a quicker fashion. Next up is the water main replacement reconstruction project. This is consistent with the program. We asked for $10.2 million a year. This is similar to our sewer main rehab replacement project that I talked earlier about. Next is the water project planning. We're just asking for $50,000. This is based off the current need for some water project planning projects. Next up is the water storage tank painting project. We have roughly 30 elevated tanks in the system, another 6 ground storage tanks. We do sort of life cycle rehab on these tanks. Most of it's painting. We do most of the painting in the sort of the off-peak season. So it's usually between October and May is when those tanks usually get painted. It's the ideal time to get them painted anyways for us, but it's also sometimes when there's bad weather that happens. Next is the routine water extensions. We're asking for $265,000, which is a $65,000 increase, and that's just based off the current estimate. And then after that, there's no real changes. The next one's the changes against closed projects. So that completes my water overview. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. I see a question from Councilwoman Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Jessica Hare, District 7. Mr. Murphy, I'm just wondering, you mentioned that the Crofton Meadows water upgrades were pushed off because of schedule. Can you just give me a little more detail? Is what exactly is behind schedule and why?
The design is taking longer than we anticipated. It was tight before to get it done in FY21. We were trying to get it started in FY21, but looks like now we won't need the money till FY22 because it'll be. I think it was going to be in the fall of the year, the FY20 of 2021, which will put it into FY22. So we didn't think that we should ask for it now. That's sort of the shift.
No, I would agree with that. I just wanted to make sure it's not something we're doing. The designer is taking longer, or there's some changes, or something is funny. It's not on our end.
No, I don't think so. I can check for you to get some more information on exactly what the delay is, if that would help. So let me get back to you. So,
okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Murphy? I don't see any, sir. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Braun, I believe that leaves just dredging. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Great. We'll pause while those folks come forward.
The Masood Gatne is with us. He's the engineer manager for the dredging program. I'll run through these projects real quick. There's only a handful that include funding in FY21 at this point. The first one, we're on page 185 for the dredging program. DMP site management is per program. The waterway improvement program is the placeholder for future projects. There aren't any expenditures taking out of that project, and FY21 shows a 0 there. Page 187 is the submerged aquatic vegetation monitoring program. That's funded at $50,000 a year, consistent with the program. The first new project is on page 188, the Deep Creek Headwaters and Cove dredging. This was included on DNR grant list for the Maryland Waterway Improvement Grants. The only projects that we move forward as new projects in this category for construction are specifically those that have been approved by DNR for the cost sharing. So this is one. The county share for this project in FY21 is $571,000. That is actually the only project that was initially on DNR's list for the state of Maryland budget this year. But the next project on page 189, the Severn River Headwaters dredging, was second on our priority list, and additional discussions with DNR since the time of their publication of their list have indicated that they feel they'll have sufficient funds to provide a grant for this project. So we've included it here, the county cost of just over $1 million in FY21, or I mean, that project cost of $1 million for FY21. Both of these two, though, because of the state budget issues that haven't been finalized, would only move forward if, in fact, it gets through the state process and is approved for the grant. And at that point, we would move forward. But these are the two that we have indications for this year that will be. The other new project we're showing on page 190 is a South County jetty study that is proposed to be funded by the county for $177,000 in FY21. This is a study to try to identify cost-effective alternatives to the significant dredging costs that we've experienced in the Cars, Parker, and Broadwater Creek areas near Deal over twice over the last 10 years. These waterways all have rapid siltation buildup, so much so that in both years when we've finished part of the dredging and then come back the next year to try to finish it, what we've done has already been filled in enough to require a significant amount of work having to be redone again. So we're hoping that, I mean, in fact, we've spent about a little over $3 million, both over the last 3 years and then also in 06 to 09 on dredging on these three waterways. And so we're proposing this study to try to find alternatives to that so that in the long run, we're not spending that amount of money on dredging these facilities. Everything else in the dredging
We've lost your audio.
I'm sorry. You got me now?
Yeah, you seem to be going in and out.
Okay, I'm sorry. Everything else in the dredging program is per previous funding, nothing changing for FY21. I can certainly update status of any of the projects if there's questions on them. Otherwise, I don't think I have anything else to present on this right now.
Okay, thank you, sir. Do we have any questions regarding dredging for Mr. Braun or his department heads? I don't see any. Oh, I see Mr. Volke has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I was a little late getting my feedback up. So I guess my question, I have a particular spot in my district over in Stony Beach where I know that there is some low water issues or some low tide issues. And I've had constituents reach out to me and want to know, are there any plans for dredging? Is anything going to happen over there? So I just didn't know if you all could speak to what, if anything, you know, might be planned in that area, Stony Creek, Stony Beach over there.
I'm not aware of anything. I'll ask Masood whether he has heard anything about that area. Muted, Masood.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Masood Gatide, Dredging Program Manager. Councilman Volke, Stony Creek, actually I've had the constituents contacting me about dredging. Most of you are aware of it. So
I didn't catch any of that.
We're losing your audio, sir. I'm sorry.
It originates from Department of Natural Resources. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you currently, yes.
Okay. So Department of Natural Resources, as David mentioned, we submit our applications on a yearly basis to that department, and based on their evaluation, they would then provide funding for our dredging. And then, of course, the council has been very kind to actually fund the remaining part of that dredging, which is actually a little bit more than 50%, because DNR does not cover labor and overhead costs. And DNR does have a formula to rate what projects actually are fundable, if you will. And it does actually depend on the number of beneficiaries. So as far as Stony Creek, the number of beneficiaries is so low that then cost per voter, if you will, is so high that those creeks do not rate high. So basically, the DNR is not going to fund it. And that's the reason that Stony Creek has not actually entered our it has not entered our queue as far as dredging. So
we're
yeah,
losing
sorry,
your
again,
audio. We may need to have you answer this question in writing, because you're coming in and out, so we're having a really hard time.
Okay.
Yeah,
We're answering it very thoroughly. We just can't hear you.
David Braun, Department of Public Works, and we can certainly do that. We'll put together an answer to the question to get to the council.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions regarding dredging projects at this time? I don't see any more questions from the council. Thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Gattenay. I'm sorry we're having trouble with your audio.
Again, can you hear me now?
Yeah, but you come in and out, and then it speeds up, and then we can't hear you. And
I'm sorry about that. I can blame it on Zoom.
Yes, I think that's what we should do with all technical difficulties.
Madam Chair, actually, I think there's a very high internet usage today. We're having a lot of trouble. I myself keep freezing. I think it's just a bad day for the internet.
I agree. And my fourth grader reported the same news as he's trying to play Fortnite this afternoon. So I think we are having, it's a high Zoom day around the country. Mr. Braun, I believe that concludes your time with us.
That is all I have. Yes, thank you.
Well, you've hung in there with us all afternoon, so I appreciate it. And I'm sure my colleagues do as well. Thank you so much for being with us today, and we will proceed. Is there any for the County Council at this time? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Volke.
May I have a second?
Rod Van Sack.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. The County Council is adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, May 13th, 2020. We will begin tomorrow sitting as the Board of Health. Thank you everyone for hanging in there today, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.